Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there folks, Colin here and welcome to the Home Building Hub, here with Darren Brennan, a co-host as always. And today we're going to cover one of the best ways and perhaps outline some of the worst ways to approach when you're dealing with or inquiring with a new home builder. Okay, so Daz, this is something that I think we can give a bit of an insight to listeners and viewers in terms of what we do, what the sales consultant goes through, just to help you understand what information is important. And as I said, certainly some things of what not to do. So we're going to outline that for you, give you the best chance of getting the best quote. That's why we're doing this one. So how are you feeling today, Daz?
Mate, going well. Got the coffee in hand early. Kicking off a good day, mate. Never a bad day when you start with a coffee. But I think it's a really relevant episode, Cole. Often people wander into a display home or they make an inquiry online, and they're actually inhibiting their own outcome by not necessarily asking the right questions or doing the right things. And in the end, we're here to help customers. We're not here to hinder customers, and I don't think anyone who picks up the phone for the first time is there to go, let's work out how do we give this guy the runaround and make this journey as arduous as possible. They actually want to make it as easy as possible and help you along the way. And I think for the most part, and I say for the most part because there are in any industry there's still a few, I'll call them sharks out there. But for the most part, people want to actually do the right thing by people, right? That's I think how we all operate, And so, by revealing your hand a bit, getting to know that person that you're dealing with, and asking for some great advice along the way, you'll feel more comfortable. They're going to reveal a lot more, and your building journey is going to be really great. And you'll end up with a nice house that you're going to be really happy with at the end. If you go the other way, then you might think, well, they never tell me anything because you're not revealing your hand at all. You've got to be a little bit vulnerable to get the right information. So it's good, mate. Looking forward to it.
No, that's great. So just before we kick off, if you like what you hear, please jump on the platform you're using, give us a 5-star review. That will be really helpful for us. If you want to learn a bit more about myself and Darren, episode number 1, introduction episode, that'll tell you who we are, what we do, what the podcast is about, etc. So other than that, I think we'll jump straight in, Daz. So as we said, the episode is really to help you understand what you should and should not be doing when you're ready to inquire, or if you've just inquired with a builder. And it's sort of come up, Daz, because I guess during this week and to be honest, during every week, we receive inquiries from people that generally say that they're too busy to talk or to meet and things like that. And they put one of them that triggered this discussion was a lot of people would inquire with builders saying, we just want to do this over email. We don't want to talk to you. We don't want to meet you. We want to do it on email. Now, a house has a myriad of things to go through. There's so many variables in terms of house, land, budget, like the list goes on. So the first thing what this has triggered coverage of this sort of topic is you can't you can't just buy a house over an email and for it to work properly, unless it's maybe perhaps at best an investment property where you know what you're getting, you know what it fits, blah, 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 blah. But I would say that email only is not a great option, but we'll cover into, I guess, the do's and do nots. I think, Darren, what's worth starting with is acknowledging why people are inquiring so hesitantly. Okay, so I would say that people in our industry or in the car industry or going to a spa shop or going to a furniture shop, as we just discussed before we started, Daz, people don't want to be sold to. Okay, so we understand where you're coming from as a potential buyer or as someone who's going through the process and trying to learn, as much as you can, which, like a podcast like this is helpful, or builder websites with information. Like, go and grab all that information and educate yourself as much as possible. But at some point, you will need to talk to a builder. They're the ones who are going to fast track the information and outline the nitty gritty of what you actually do need to know. You can spend 3 months monitoring realestate.com to get a package that that you've been waiting for, or you could just pick up the phone and have someone prepare and finalize a package for you. Because most of the time, an inquiry we get on at realestate.com, it's very, very rare for someone to actually purchase that house as advertised on that block, because they start learning about the variations. So I think I just wanted to acknowledge, as first and foremost, that we understand where people are coming from. Do your homework, that's fine, but at some point you will have to reach out, and this episode's to give you some tips on how best to do that. Maybe, Daz, before we give the tips on what not to do and what to do, let's explain to the viewers and the listeners, what does a consultant actually do? What's their role here, and why are they trying to extract information from the home buyers?
I guess, yeah, absolutely, Cole. They're there to try and find the best solution for you, I guess, is ultimately it. And that's from both a house and a land perspective. And whether you're dealing with just the house rep for both house and land, or you're dealing with a land rep and a house rep, they want to try and provide you the best solution. They really want to try and help you get what it is you're after. So, it's pretty important in the end to work hand in hand with those guys, and you might be working with multiples. And I think it's really good to, as you said, set some boundaries. You've got to be a little bit vulnerable, but you can also set some boundaries whilst being vulnerable. So yeah, you got to reveal your hand a bit, but at the same token, you can say, here's how I want this transaction to take place within my rules as well. Does that work for you? And they'll be pretty straight with you. Yeah, I reckon I can work with you along those lines. I'm not going to bring my wife in until I've worked out what we actually want. Great, that's okay. Cool, don't bring your wife in until then. That's okay. We get it. But at that point, when we've worked all that out, they're going to be happy to bring her in, and run through that. That sort of stuff, I guess, is pretty important. So number one is, yeah, definitely there to help provide a solution. I guess number two is, they need a certain amount of information to be able to provide that. They need the ingredients, as you said earlier, Cole. It's like baking a cake. If you don't have a list of ingredients, you're just banging stuff in and hoping for the best, right? It's not what it's about. So they will need things such as a budget, your house preference, are you after a single or a double story? How many bedrooms, living areas, do you want a theatre, not a theatre? These sort of things. The location, the size of the land that you're after, all that's best, and again, you're going to get a million questions back and forth on email, or you can just have a quick phone call and go, here's the 10 things that are important, right? And it'll probably take a hell of a lot less time, right? And it might mean the email says, hey, can I talk to you at a certain time, right? Set up a time to do that. I did that myself this week. I was chatting to Telstra and I said to the guy, mate, listen, I'm flat out right now. Can you ring me at 4:30? I'll be in the car. He's like, absolutely. 4:40, he rings me. I'm happy. All right, he was 10 minutes late, but it didn't bother me. It was after the time I wanted. I was in the car. We had a conversation, and we got things to work. So having an open, communication is really important in that. I guess most people struggle at the start to find the house that they want in the location that they want within a price range that they want, because often they've set really high expectations, right? And they're not willing to adjust from there. The complete reverse of that is, if you're not vulnerable around some of that information giving, the consultants likewise are going to be not as vulnerable in giving you information. And what I mean by that is, this week, for example, we came across a block of land that's about $80,000 under the market price. Now, we don't want to give that block of land to someone who's not interested really, and not being, helpful, and not showing a little bit of vulnerability. What we want to do is give it to someone who we think's worthy of that. So one customer will ring up and they'll be real sheepish and not give us a whole lot of info, and we won't even present that to them, because the other person we're dealing with is much more, showing their vulnerability, and seems like they're more needy of that saving. So those things come along. Don't miss out on those opportunities by not asking the right questions, giving enough information, and those sort of opportunities in this market do come along. In a busy market, they don't come along at all. Just buy it, because otherwise you're going to miss out. In this market, there's going to be some really, really good deals. out there that you want to know about. And I'm not talking about, in this case, it's a nomination lot. So someone's bought that lot 2 years ago and is happy to sell it at 2 years ago pricing. Hence, it's 80 grand under the market. They're not wanting to make a cent extra out of that. They just want to get rid of it. So, over the weekend, hopefully, we'll put a buyer on that block of land with the nice house, and they've ended up with a ripping deal, right? And that's because, and I know right now we're working with 2 or 3 different people on it, but already there's a selection criteria from our end as much as there is from your end as a consumer that our guys are going, well, who's the most valid for it? We want to look after them. So that's another one. I guess the sales consultant's going to get all those ingredients, try and find the right solution. It does take time. It takes time to find the right block of land, making sure that the house is going to fit, making sure that the block's right. There's no headaches on there. There's not too much fall, too much fill on the block, easements, all this sort of stuff that we want to check and understand. That there's not a different set of covenants on that actual lot. Could be a whole estate, and that one's got a 2-story covenant. Without knowing that, you might want a single. You've got to have a double on it, that sort of stuff. Reviewing those estate requirements. And we're talking, they're going to give up several hours potentially for you to try and find you that right solution, and they want to. It's their job to try and find you that right solution. So, the consultant's end of the day, their job is there to help you, the consumer. So let them do that. Let them do their job. So it's probably it. I don't know, Cole, if you want to touch on it.
No, I think they're all good points that just reinforce to people just to understand, like, the sales consultant is there. It's not like real estate where we're arguing over a base price. In our industry, we don't argue over base prices. The builder sets the base price, and that's what it's available for. And there are promotions, yes, but the consultant's not going to try and sell a house at a base price higher than what they're allowed to. They're not there to try and do that. They're going to try and find you the best solution they can, and that's a combination of house and or land within the budget you've given them. If you give them a budget that's 50, 80K under what you can actually afford, you can expect a house or a block of land 50 to 80K under what you're actually wanting. It's just like you're setting yourself up for failure by giving them the wrong information up front. I see that every single day. So what I would say to reinforce what Darren said is if you can give your sales consultant, a builder, the right ingredients, then they will come back with some solutions for you. Here's one at the lower end. Here's one at the higher end. Here's one in the middle. That's their job. And please respect that it takes hours to go through design guidelines and engineering, all that sort of stuff. And if you're not going to give them anything, they're not going to go spend hours on you to do that. And that's the frustrating part from our point of view. We've got salespeople out there who don't want to waste all their time because they've been burnt by people. Someone says email only, thank you. Like, the reception you're going to get from the sales consultant in return for that is zero, and rightfully so, because why would you spend all that time if you're not even willing to pick up the phone and have a phone call with me? So please understand where they're coming from. And that leads into the next part, Darren. Here's a list of things not to do, and Darren will then cover, I guess, the best approach that we encourage you guys to go with. So one of the things, obviously, we've covered is email only. It's just not practical, not possible. You probably think about your own work situation. There's sometimes those people at work who just send emails only, and they're hesitant to have a meeting face-to-face or a phone call when and we know, you could probably nail, 50 emails worth of content in about a 5 to 10 minute conversation. That's the same thing that applies here. Okay, so we need to get to know what you're looking for. We need to get to know the basics, like the budget, the real budget, the house and the land. That's fine. But I mean, do you want the master at the front or the back? Like, what's important to you? These things are better in the discussion.
I think also, Cole, in that too, is one thing people forget, because we're all human, that when you read something, you're going to read tone into that. So sometimes it'll be, the person's written something and you're thinking, geez, they're a bit rude in the way they've approached this. So what do? We're human. So you go back with a little less sheepish answer. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, bloody hell, I've got to deal with this guy. Well, that may not be at all what their intention is, And when you talk to them on the phone, you realise they're the most amazing person. You're like, geez, if only I've understood that a bit better earlier, I would have handled this in a different way, because we're human, right? We're human. Yeah. So tone is not great in emails and it's hard to pick, So,
No.
and I'm guilty of that. I often reply and then I forget to put hi Colin at the front of my email. And I'm thinking, I've already hit send. I'm like, geez, I must look like a bit of an ass right now. He's probably thinking, how rude is he? He didn't even say g'day, mate, or whatever. And I am that guy that says g'day, mate, to everyone, right? So, but in an email, I forget. Life's too busy.
Yeah,
Bang,
that's
here's the
right.
reply. Oh, shit, here we go. So, yeah, be mindful of that, what that's like, because the receiver at the other end, often the sales consultant is going to be like, oh, geez, they're a bit abrupt or a bit rude, or, could have said thanks, not knowing that
Yep.
underneath it, they actually they've said thanks, and we've got to teach our guys to make sure that they're not prejudging, but they're human. So,
Yeah.
cool.
If
Sorry.
you are busy, like most people are, it's actually about have the phone call and the discussion up front, lay it all on the table, and then you can go over email quite easily because the consultant's got all the ingredients they need. And then they'll go back and forth. How about this block? How about this? How about that? And that's when you can sort of help finish the discussion over an email or get it to a point where you're happy and ready to finalize. But you've got to start somewhere, and that is through a discussion. So the other thing we say, which is in line with the email only, is this happens all the time, Darren, is people don't supply, they inquire about a promotion or about a package or about a whatever, and then they don't even leave a phone number or they deliberately leave the wrong phone number for all the reasons we've just discussed. Don't do that. It's absolutely pointless. There's no reason for a sales consultant to want to call you and help you if you're not even willing to give your phone number up. If you're not ready to talk to someone and not ready to give your phone number up, it means you're not ready to inquire. Okay. So I would say do your homework and get to a point where you're ready to inquire and then off you go. The truth is,
Unless you
like,
work at the zoo and you want to have a laugh and you can put in your name is A Lion and people ring the zoo. I'd like to speak to A Lion, please.
yeah, it's pretty common. We understand why people do it, but please, it's email only and leaving false numbers and stuff is not really worth anyone's time. If you're not ready to inquire, just don't. If you're not ready to inquire because you don't understand enough, what you might find is send an inquiry, have a discussion. You might learn a bit then. So if you don't know maybe you don't know what size house you want. Maybe you don't know what your budget is. Maybe you don't know what locations or estates are available. The salespeople are there to help. They know all of those things. They know exactly what house you can get in what location for what budget. So save yourself the time, have the chat with them, and then you'll be able to go and think about, where to go from there. Okay. Um, the last one I'd say, second last probably there would be don't ignore the phone call. So if you do leave an inquiry, you will get phone calls from salespeople. Okay. And sometimes to the point where you'd probably say that's feeling like a bit of harassment. Most cases, don't get us wrong, Darren said there are some sharks, I suppose, but some people are naturally, through a whole massive industry, going to be a little bit more forward and aggressive. But for the most part, the reason you're getting a call from a sales consultant is because they're trying to hunt you down for an answer on something or a bit of feedback or whatever it may be. So ignoring the calls will result in only one thing: more phone calls. Just answer it or to even text back, I'm actually not interested. We're going to give it a break for 3, 6 months or whatever. That's all a sales consultant needs, because then they'll stop calling you and then maybe they'll call you in 3 or 6 months. Like, it's, yeah, while you're still giving them the hope or the thought that there's something active and engaging there, they will continue to be active and engaging. Yeah.
I think also, Colin, as businesses, the businesses spend a lot of money on advertising. They spend a lot of money on places like realestate.com, Facebook, etc. So when you do put an inquiry through, it's come at a cost to that business. So the business wants to receive a return, and therefore they want to see that you've made contact if you're a consultant with that person. So
Yeah.
ringing once, and we're all busy, and we're all sort of scared of the phone number that's coming through because is it a bloody call from some, Amazon wanting to bloody tell you that your prime that you don't have is now bloody, they're going to charge your credit card or something, or, any of that crap that goes on. So we're all a bit like, oh, Christ, who's this idiot ringing me? I'm not
Yeah.
answering that. A lot of people do that, I guess. If you get the call, they'll generally leave a message or shoot you a text. Just reply, look, I'm busy right now. Can you call me at 5 o'clock? Can you call me at 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever that might be? And they'll do their best to try and accommodate that. So,
Yep. Yeah, we do get a bit of that. Just people dragging it out, and it doesn't make the sales team and the builder feel real good about it. So please, I guess, have a little bit of respect for their time. just tell them that's all they want. I'm not interested. I'm done. I found another builder, or whatever it may be. Or, it's okay to tell people those things. It's just best to do it up front. The last thing I'd say uh, is don't be a hero. So let me explain that. So there are different types of clients that we deal with. Okay, so from first home buyers to investors, they would etc. They would be buyer types, but they're actually, as you know, we're all different as human beings. But sometimes in our industry, we come across, this is mainly my term, Darren, what I call a hero client. Now, this is a client who barely lets the consultant talk. This is a client who tells the consultant the way it should be. This is a client who thinks they know everything. And then what actually happens in the end is that the consultant's like, well, if you know everything, that's fine. I'm just going to leave you be. And they don't want to help you. And sometimes, even if they proceed, they'll find that they miss things because you don't want to get into an argument with someone over the purchase of a house. You want to help them do it. So, my advice is don't be a hero. Take the information in, whether you think it's right, whether you think it's wrong, whether you agree, whether you don't, whether it's for you, whether it's your budget or not. That's okay. They're considerations you can go around the kitchen table and think about with the family, but don't come in hot-headed and start telling consultants how the industry works, because it just will backfire on you. I've seen it over and over and again. So yeah, please consider that. Yeah.
In that space, Cole, you can always be learning. And I went through myself. I went through about 6 different job sites yesterday. And you're learning stuff. Like, I've been doing this a long time, 18 years, I think now. But you're always learning. And that's the joy, right? Is when you go and you look at some of these places. Like, I went and looked at a slab being poured yesterday. There was a couple of things there's a couple of changes being made. They've changed from bar stools, and anyone who knows what a bar stool in a frame is to hold the mesh up. They've moved from bar stools on our sites to like they're calling them bars. So they're not stools, they're now long bars, which just makes a whole lot of sense. But not knowing that, I hadn't seen that before. I hadn't seen a slab poured for a little while. We've been doing that now for a few months, and that's the first time I've seen it. So I'm not talking to people about that. But, you see how much more stable they are, how much better it is for the reinforcement. You can walk across the top of the slab easier before it's poured, not put holes in the waffle pod. So some of those changes you learn about. All I'm suggesting is, even if you know it all, and I reckon I know a fair bit, Cole, you're still learning. Right. And after all this time, I'm still
Absolutely.
learning. And I get to ask questions of people and do that. And even though a whole lot of the stuff I get answers on, I might already know, there's little, nuggets of wisdom that you pick up along the way by asking those questions that really help, and you become more educated and get a greater understanding of that process. So,
Yeah.
absolutely. I guess, Cole, maybe I'll touch on the best approach, as a customer, making that contact. And I guess number one is speak to your broker before you inquire with the builder. If you don't have a broker and you want a good broker, a lot of the builders will be able to recommend you a good broker as well. A lot of the land guys will as well. There are some really good brokers out there, particularly those that focus on construction finance. And it's a bit different to a normal buying a house from a real estate agent. There's progress payments and stuff required. You've got to settle the land first. A little bit more work for the broker. Not everyone wants to do it, right? So getting the right broker is always going to be great. And they're also going to know which lenders are going to lend for construction, etc. And they'll be able to help you work out a way to set a budget of which you can operate within, right? And obviously, you've got to reveal your hand to your broker too, right? So often do we get, with the broker side, people don't want to give a whole lot of information out, right? They're going to want some pay slips. They're going to want some other information. They want to know what debts you've got, etc. Just be open and transparent about this. It's not going to it's not going to hurt. They're there to help. So give them that information to really help you be able to find out what you can afford, start to help you say, well, in that budget now, I can afford a house in that suburb, or I've got to look at the suburb next door, or I've got to talk to the sales rep and see if they've got some magic wand to wave, like a nomination lot, that they might be able to help me out on to get me into the suburb that I want to be in, etc. Right? So that will certainly help. that helps not waste time of others as well. That when you go in there, and we see it, we had a customer just recently, doesn't want to give us any idea of his budget. So you present something, he's like, oh, that's more than I was hoping to spend. Well, mate, what did you expect? How much more is it? Well, you
Yeah.
wouldn't tell us your budget.
Or the
Please.
house is too small. And that's the biggest issue we have. We're wasting hours on quoting things up for people that it's too small or it's too big or it's too expensive. It doesn't fit what I was looking for. It's like you need to tell people. Yeah.
So have a minimum and maximum budget to work with is absolutely paramount. And let them know. Like, I'm hoping to spend between 600 and 700. Great, perfect range. Gives us a wide opportunity. But also understand that sometimes one is the bank will sometimes lend you more money than you expect. And in this market, sometimes they're lending you less than you can expect. So having that information up front is really important. But also, if you've said, look, I only want to spend 650, but you can spend a little bit more, then it might be in your interest to look at that to get the things that you want, right? So you might go from 650 to 660, and that might just help you out to get a few of those nice things you want rather than missing out. And if you're looking at what that looks like, that's going to cost you about $50 a month, right? So it's not a lot. It's like less than $2 a day to get the house you want versus the house you don't want. Just buy like 2 less of these things every week, 2 less coffees, right? And you'll be able to afford that money, that extra money you need. So that's number one. Give us all the information you want about the house, the information we want. We need your wants and needs, right? What are the really important things you need? And then what are the things you want above that if it can fit within your budget, right? Have a realistic expectation of what that looks like. I always say to people, a brand new home looks amazing. Even a standard brand new home looks amazing. If you walk through, it's funny, I went through a house we're about to hand over yesterday, and I went through a brand new display that just opened, but at a bottom end of our range of displays. So not the high end, the bottom end, right? So it would be almost as low a spec as you get in a display that we would build. They're actually very similar homes, but one's got furniture and one doesn't. And the one that's got furniture looks better than the one that doesn't. I'd actually say the inclusions on the one that doesn't have the furniture is actually better because I'm looking beyond the furniture. I'm smarter than that, right? I'm not looking at the furniture. I'm saying, hold on, floor-to-ceiling tiles, freestanding bath, all this stuff that's in there, high ceilings. It had a rake ceiling through the living area, stuff like that. Someone else will walk in and go, oh, they're not picking up any of that and not realising that the other home's actually a nicer end product, and when you put your own furniture and stuff, it's going to look amazing. So those wants and needs. Land information, how big you want and the location you want, and the price you're hoping to spend. And also that can be relevant too, because if we can save you a little bit of money on the land, it might save you a little bit in stamp duty, for example, right? If you're a first home buyer, trying to get that budget right, because it might mean that, you're eligible for some of the government grants that you wouldn't have been eligible for if we know where that sits. Like, I really want to be in this range so that I can get this grant. Awesome. Let's see what we can do to help. The other one I'd really suggest to you is if you're comparing 2 quotes, get the builder to do the comparison for you. Why? Because we know what we're looking for, right? And I compared 2 quotes the other day. One from us, one from another builder. They're about $20,000 apart, which is a lot of money. If they were equal, I'd be saying, and what I mean by equal, if you're happy with the inclusions on both and you think they're the same and that's a better deal, 20 grand's a lot of money, buy the 20 grand cheaper if it's equal and you're happy with the builder and you trust the builder, all that sort of stuff, right? But in this case, it wasn't equal. One didn't include a driveway. It didn't include 900 mil appliances. It didn't include fly screens. It didn't include a whole range of things, right? And then you look at some of the other smaller detail. It included a hot water service, but it was about 25% smaller. It included some other stuff, just different stuff that wasn't as nice. So in the end, the $20,000 gap wasn't really a $20,000 gap. In fact, I would suggest by the time that builder added in all the same stuff, it's probably equal. And generally speaking, most quotes are going to be pretty damn close. So at that point, you can make a more educated decision, right? And if you prefer the more expensive one, right, then work out why is it more expensive? Ask those questions. Give them the quotes. Give both builders the quotes and see what answers they come up with. It'll also deliver a level of transparency about their own vulnerabilities as well. Are they willing to let you know that actually we don't include that and they do, even though we're more expensive, etc. Right? So you can really get to the bottom of that. And I find that they're going to really help you along the way, and hopefully that information you're able to provide gets you a smoother journey, a house more like what you're after at a price that you're more after, and can afford. So, it's really important to be a bit vulnerable in the process, and people want to help vulnerable people, right? It's the nature of who we are. So it's
Yep.
good, Cole. I think that hopefully helps a fair bit, really.
Yeah, it's important that quote thing you said. It's really good. Share the quotes to the other builders you're talking to. You find that the consultant that you feel more comfortable with or trust a bit more, they'll be happy to go through the quote and point out the ins and outs from theirs and from their own quote and the other builders, and just give you the information. Like, you're better letting someone else who knows what they're doing go through quotes. And I guess the only thing I'd add, Darren, is whilst we're saying to you, get a budget, get an idea of house, get an idea of land, location, size, etc. If you don't know what those things are because you're just starting, and a lot of people don't have any idea, like, I don't know what size I can get in a location, I don't know what the estates are, we can help. Just say, I don't know where to begin. And then the first thing you need to do is you'll go to a broker, and then you'll get given a capacity. Here's a minimum, here's a maximum. You give the capacity to a consultant and say, right, I've seen your broker or this broker of my own. Here's what I've got to start with. What can I get? And then the consultant will give you straight away, they'll give you ballpark. Okay, you can probably get a 22 square house in this area, or you can get a 20 square house a little bit closer in this area. And that, they'll go through, and then you can go and think about that and say, okay, I think, can you work on option A for me? Okay, so then you can start narrowing down the house and the land information a little bit in more detail. That's probably all I'd add there, Darren, is that some people don't know, and we're happy to help. That's their job. That's what salespeople are there for. Consultants are in our industry. They know the land, they know the houses, they know a whole lot about getting a solution for you. But again, if you've got the ingredients, please share them. If you don't have the ingredients, just tell them, I don't know yet, but please help me narrow down what I can get.
Yeah.
Definitely,
With,
definitely,
with your
yeah.
with your broker too, Cole. Obviously, a couple of weeks back there, we've had another interest rate rise, and I know that's put a bit of fear in people. Um, I think most people would agree that, and just this week, obviously, unemployment numbers have been announced and they've gone up a bit. So it's, starting to talk unlikely that there'll be any more interest rate rise. And I say unlikely, it's no guarantee, right? But one thing people forget is what the cost of that is. So on a $500,000 loan, it's about $75 a month that's gone up, right? So again, a few less of these coffees,
Mm.
right? You probably can afford if again the bank will lend you the money. But the other part is in about 10 months' time from now, I'm predicting about 10 months' time from now, I'd suggest that the interest rates may have actually turned the corner and may look to drop, particularly if we see some of these other key fundamentals, inflation numbers coming down, unemployment going up, etc. More likely, the interest rates are going to go down, and I think that's the consensus. Is at some point that'll be the case. You might be only 10 payments at $75 to have the house that you want and be on that process and be moving into a new home. That's $750. Like, it's not sheep stations that people are going to be paying extra. And I think people
Mm.
forget that. They hear about this 25 basis points rise and they get really scared. And what's that going to look like? And I can't afford it now. But reality is, it's probably only $750. It's going to cost you more to get into the house that you want. And then if we see a drop, you're back, right? See another drop, it's going to cost you $750 less over the preceding 10 months. So, be mindful out, chat to your broker about that and get them to give you some really good advice. Because also, they might be able to negotiate you a rate that's 25%, percent, not 20.25%, lower. That's going to really help, So don't be so scared of those interest rate rises because they're not as bad as they're made out to be. They're not great. No one wants them, but they're certainly not crazy in that sense. So.
Well, hopefully that helps everybody with their approach to builders and inquiries. And yeah, as we always say, if you like what you've seen or heard, then please leave us a 5-star review on the platform you're on. Any questions or feedback, homebuildinghub.com.au, jump on there. And yeah, other than that, Darren, I think wrapped up another one.
Catch you in a week.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Good on you, mate. Cheers. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. And just our disclaimer, whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions.
1,